My name is Adam Krieger. I'm the founder of Preferred Strategies, and I'll be walking through today's session on near-time JD Edwards Data Warehouse, what makes it the optimal data foundation for BI. This session is going to be primarily going through talking about design techniques as well as things to look for when it comes to data warehousing, and get into a little bit about our Jumpstart data warehouse for JD Edwards and the model and design that we use. So as far as the agenda goes, again, let's start with a little overview about preferred strategies, get into some data warehousing, our Jumpstart, and then talk about implementation timeline as well as questions. So we've kind of created a Jumpstart. We call it BI QuickLaunch. It's kind of broken out. There's a few different flavors of that. What we're talking about today is the data warehouse as a foundation to support a BI initiative, and with our tailored content for JD Edwards, that allows you to kind of get going with a reporting or BI strategy without having to spend all the legwork to get started. So that's what we're going to talk about today on the data warehouse. We also have a direct connect. We'll call it our BI Quick Views, and we layer a suite of database views over the transaction JD Edwards data. And for customers that want to implement and either complement their data warehouse strategy or implement an alternative strategy in a direct connect fashion, we support that as well. However, we're not going to get into the details of that so much on this webinar. Feel free to attend, and we'll send an invite to the other webinars when we get into the direct connect options as well. So that's kind of as a foundation, and that's where, again, we're kind of getting the data and translate it into a usable format for reporting in BI. And then we've got some canned jumpstart. So, whether or not it's for Oracle BI Publisher, some of the free licenses you get from Oracle, free plugin to Microsoft Excel called Power Pivot, and the server-based version of that called Tabular, business objects and crystal reports tailored for JD Edwards. So again, we focus on the kind of the magic quadrant, the market-leading sector of BI, and also other tools like Qlik or Tableau are also options as well. So as far as the the Jumpstart, we have a full services implementation program as well. We get everything up and running, connected to your data, tailored for customization, provide some training, consulting, and whatever level of support you need. So first off, what are these three different approaches to BI and implementing BI? So we talk about a direct connect. So what is a direct connect? When we refer to that, it's more of you're connecting your reporting and BI platform directly to the transaction data. So you're not moving or copying the data. If you go and post a journal entry in the system and you refresh your trial balance, whatever is in your source system, in this case JD Edwards, would be reflected in your report. So we call that a direct connect. The other option is we call ODS, or operational data store, where some companies don't want to hit their transaction data directly, so they can replicate the data or mirror the data, kind of create another database and offload the reporting to that separate copy of the transaction JD data set. Again, we call that an operational data store. And then the last is referred to as a data warehouse. And the difference in the data warehouse is this is where a lot of in the term ETL, extract, transform, and load of the software from the source system, in this case JD Edwards, and put it into maybe an enterprise data warehouse target. You're basically modeling the data in a data warehouse. So you're kind of getting that data structured in a way to facilitate BI. But these are kind of the three different approaches. So direct connect, an ODS, and a data warehouse. And these can all be, companies can implement these individually or a combination of these as well. So we'll talk about a little bit more about primarily the operational data store and data warehouse as we proceed through the session today. So what is an enterprise data warehouse? So looking online, you can find a lot of different descriptions on blogs and sites. We looked at Wikipedia. We actually like the description on Techopedia better. So we'll kind of just threw that on the deck here. So according to Techopedia, an enterprise data warehouse is a unified database that holds all the business information of an organization and makes it accessible across the company. Although there are many interpretations of what makes an enterprise-class data warehouse, the following features are often included: a unified approach for organizing and representing data, the ability to classify data according to subject and gives access according to those divisions, sales, finance, inventory, and so on. So as we go through this session, we'll talk about things to look for and what we're referring to as an enterprise data warehouse. The bigger picture is, again, you are dedicating a database and a data model for the analysis and reporting and BI efforts within your organization. So why do you need a data warehouse? Again, it's definitely for a long time in BI has been referred to as the go-to required platform to support any BI initiative. Nowadays with a lot of in-memory capabilities, with a lot of companies coming out, that it's not necessarily always the case from a performance perspective, because now with these in-memory solutions, the performance can be very well either going against a transaction system or ODS. But when you talk about we talk about here improving integration. So if you need to tightly integrate, let's say JD Edwards with non-JD Edwards data, and maybe you've got a budget and planning system in another application, you got JD Edwards for all your actuals, you need to blend all that together, tightly integrated. Or so that's where data warehouse makes sense, because you can pull that data from multiple sources, feed it into one target destination, and blend it together the way you need. Or even in some cases, just combining different module. If you need to tightly integrate sales with GL information on the JD Edwards side, and at the data level you want to do some blending of that data, that's where, again, the data warehouse makes sense. Because you're building out this data structure dedicated for analysis, provides faster, more flexible reporting. So it's designed in a way solely for users to query and access and analyze the data, and that's why you're doing it. You can also tailor it to provide it's much more optimal performant because of the design techniques. We'll talk a little bit more about what some of those design techniques are here in a minute. Slowly changing dimensions. So if you're not familiar with what slowly changing dimensions are, typically they're how one dimension or something in your source system may be categorized. So for instance, let's take a look at a sales rep. So today you might have a sales force of, let's say, 10 people, and they're all scattered across 3 different regions. So when a sales rep kind of changes from one region to another, a lot of source systems, and JD Edwards in a lot of areas does the same thing, you can actually apply at any given time what region that sales rep is associated with, typically, let's say, a category code. But when a sales rep changes region, well, you need to go in, let's say, to the address book and flag what the new region may be. But that's keeping the historical of, well, that sales rep was at the western region for 2 years, and now he just switched over to the central region for the last 6 months. So what a data warehouse allows you to do is kind of track some of those changes, and so you can get a historical view of that data. So if you needed to go back last year and run a sales report, you could see the data of what that sales rep had when he was at the western region, whereas if you ran the report currently, it would actually return back, or if looking over 2 years, it kind of split up the sales according to the proper regions based on the sales rep. So that's kind of how you can manage some of those. There's lots of different types of slowly changing dimensions. We're not going to get into those details today, but if that's a requirement, we'd be happy to kind of take that offline with you as well and explain how we can address it. The other thing with a lot of JD Edwards customers is archiving data, right? So some customers want to purge their GL, purge their sales transactions, and they do that, maybe after only, they want to keep them the last 2 or 3 years of data in the system, but they've basically been on live JD Edwards for 10 years. So with the data warehouse, again, you can kind of keep that historical set of data, keep your transaction system a little bit more lean, because you have that ability to analyze that historical data through the ability to blend that with the current data set within the warehouse. Another benefit, obviously, offloading the queries from the transaction system. So users are not hitting, when they run their reports or their dashboards are not connected directly to the transaction system. Data is being fed over to the warehouse, and that's where all the queries are being managed. Data quality. So part of the process is kind of cleansing the data as it's coming across. You have the ability to, if you have blank descriptions and you want to apply a value to that, or null values at a 0 or unknown. So if you've got, certain dimensions that don't have the proper values, you can go ahead and address that to make for query's sake, a more meaningful explanation rather than seeing a blank. A user might see something that says no regions or unknown values. And then again, part of why you're building all this in the data warehouse is to provide self-service BI, and you do that because you're putting the data and structuring it in a way that makes it more meaningful for the front-end tools of BI to be able to access, and then users can quickly build their reports or create their dashboards for management. So there's always this quest for the one truth. I think this definitely applies when we talk about data warehousing, and that I'm sure this happens at a lot of organizations where you go into a board meeting, or maybe it's an executive committee meeting, and you've got 3 different departments or divisions representing, let's say, net sales. So you've got marketing presenting net sales value, you've got the sales department presenting net sales value, and you've got finance presenting net sales, and they're all different, right? And a lot of that comes into, well, marketing doesn't include these 2 deductions, but sales includes one of those, and finance doesn't include any of them. So you end up getting this, everybody saying, here's our net sales for the last quarter, and the numbers are different. So with the data warehouse, you can take what those different criterias are for the different departments and create those as different measures in your warehouse. So when you go and present, you can get a marketing net sales, sales net sales, and finance net sales, and all have that, so everybody knows exactly what's driving those different values. So the warehouse allows you to do that and build that into the modeling of the data. Some features to look for, and this is kind of covering a lot of our elements of our Jumpstart BI QuickLaunch data warehouse for JD Edwards. It's a Star-Schema, so there's a few different flavors: Star-Schema, Snowflake. Again, we're not going to get into the details of the differences of those, but we kind of follow more of a Ralph Kimball model and a Star-Schema, where in essence you've got a fact table in the middle surrounded by your different dimensions. We use a concept of conformed dimensions, so rather than copy, let's say, the business unit dimension as have a separate copy and a data mart for each module of JD Edwards, we basically are populating that table and that dimension one time, and it's shared across all modules. So that's kind of where you set up and share dimensions across all the facts, and the meanings across those is consistent. With the way that the relationships are joined is through a technique called surrogate keys. So each dimension table and each fact for each dimension object will actually have a key associated with it that's a numeric value. What that allows you to do is, being that you're joining all tables on that key, and it's a numeric value, provides a better performance system. And the fact that we're going and identifying if there's any blank values and associating that within the dimension tables, we can do everything on an inner join. So with the data warehouse, you're now getting everything on a very efficient key, as well as equal joins. And if you're in the data warehouse side of things, that obviously performs better than doing everything as left out, which you may have to do if you're going with a direct connect approach. Full incremental loads. So we'll talk a little bit more about this in a few minutes, but the first time you populate your data warehouse, you've got your structure, but there's no data. So all your data is in your source system. So the first time you load the data warehouse, you do what we refer to as a full load. You're copying everything from the source tables in JDE, going through the transformation process and populating the target data warehouse. And then once you've got that full load, we like to use a more of what we call an incremental approach. And this is what leads to the near time or near real time data warehousing, in that the incremental is really just pulling the changes. So it's pulling from your source systems if it's an I series, that's from the journals, or if it's Oracle or SQL Server as a source, pulling from the logs. And so if there's only been 1,000 changed records in the last hour, that's what gets trickle fed into the warehouse. So that's what's referred to as incremental, by, again, pulling those, just the changes, and feeding those instead of actually pulling the full tables. Operational data store, again, some companies, it may be an option, and some companies may be a requirement as a staging area for BI. So you might want to replicate your data from iSeries into SQL Server and then feed a target warehouse or to another data store. And then auditing and notification. So one of the things that we do through our process is we build in some auditing. So we're doing checksums and row counts to compare the source and target to verify that and validate that we're in sync. And then throughout the ETL process, as those jobs are running, we're adding some additional logging to kind of track start and end times, as well as some of those row counts through the process. And then if there's anything that an error log or an error pops up into the log, and we can go ahead and notify the users that need to be informed of that. So that's kind of what we're doing. Again, from the data model and the structure and the challenges, so JD Edwards data is not structured in a way to easily facilitate BI. So there's thousands of tables, cryptic table names like F0006. Again, in the warehouse, we refer to that as DIM business unit. Cryptic field names, GBOBJ for, let's say, the object account. Again, we want to give it a usable name, an intuitive name. The dates, each date in JD Edwards stored as a Julian format. So in our warehouse, we provide the native Julian format as well as the Gregorian date. All the decimal precision for amounts and units through that process is going to be addressed, so the data is stored in the warehouse. And we're structuring the data to every company, when you get to the end result of your reporting, you're going to want to track month-to-date, quarter-to-date, year-to-date values, and so getting the data structured in a way to support those type of time-based measures is all kind of what's going on. We're taking summary tables in JD Edwards, like the account balances, where I'm pivoting that and giving a new dimensionality by period. It allows you to do trend reporting, addressing all the user-defined codes, the subledgers, the data type mismatches across modules where fields should be the same, and making them common across those is what we're doing in the BI QuickLaunch. Those conform dimensions, again, just another view of that. So you can see here as the rows, different modules, and the columns would be the different dimensions. So you can see the example, accounts payable. These may be the applicable dimensions there. The address book, the business unit. Some of these are, you can see across pretty much all modules. And then maybe we'll pull up a flavor here of some diagrams. Pull that up real quick. So one of the things, this whole Star-Schema. So part of our, we have these diagram documents to kind of display for each of the different modules that we support. Here are the applicable fact and dimensions, and you can see here for each of the different modules what are the different key views of the data and what are the relationships amongst those. So that's something that we provide. Let's go back to that. So let's talk about, again, this near-time data warehousing. So there's really, again, when you get into the data warehouse approach, there's a few different ways that companies go about it. When we start talking to companies that currently have a data warehouse, in most cases, what companies are doing are nightly full loads. So what a nightly full load is, when you do a full load, first thing you need to do is you truncate everything in your target. So in this case, your enterprise data warehouse, you're going to basically clear out all the rows and the tables in the target, or whatever tables you're going to do a full load on. Then it goes from the source system and copies all that data to the target again. So the challenge there with that is that, let's say in my 911 I've got 50 million rows of data, but in the last year I've only got 1 million rows. With a nightly full load, I'm deleting or truncating 49 million rows that I need to repopulate again. So there's a lot of extra work for moving data that doesn't change on a daily basis. So there's always a window. So if you're going to do a nightly load and you want something and you run something every night, and that frequency of data is acceptable to your users, there's nothing wrong with that. Just keep in mind you do have that window of when you kick it off at 10 o'clock at night, it has to be, let's say, done by 6 in the morning so people can use it. So that's one option, but what we like to implement is more of an incremental approach. And some companies, when you go down an incremental path, traditionally some companies might go and run something, okay, we update our warehouse at noon and at 4 and then at midnight, right? So a few times a day there's a refresh of that. Again, if you're going to be using it throughout the day, you can't really do full loads during the day because at the time when you truncate the data until it's populated again, you won't be able to query it. So you can still do an incremental approach. And what the incremental, again, as I mentioned before, is you're pulling from those the logs or journals within the source systems, and based on that. So when you go into JD Edwards and you add a field, or you add a row of data, or you change a value in the system, or you delete a record, it writes that to, let's say, a log. And based on what's in that log, we can, the tools scrape those logs and feed those over to the warehouse. So some companies say, well, we still only want to go through that process multiple times a day. To get to near time is you're going to constantly be circling through, let's say, every minute. And every minute you're going to have a loop that goes out, gets all those changes, and applies those to the warehouse. So basically you're trickle feeding your data warehouse. We call that near time. So what we find with our customers going down the data warehouse path is that you could be running anywhere between 2 and 10 minutes behind your production transaction system. So again, that's just using that same technique. As far as go back to that for a second. What we use for our ETL for our data warehouse uses Microsoft SSIS, which is available with both professional and standard. And with the SSIS or enterprise, enterprise version, you can it comes with what's a native CDC, which is referred to as this near-time functionality. We've also built a custom component for SSIS for standard. So a lot of JD Edwards customers may be running on SQL Server Standard as a source, and we've got the ability to do that same type of near-time updating to the warehouse, even with SQL Server Standard. We also support not just SQL Server source systems for JDE, but as JD Edwards runs on Oracle, DB2, and SQL Server, we support all three supported database source platforms. Again, by doing all this in the back end, you're now getting the data so users can start getting that consistency across the board. So not only are they able to build their own reports and dashboards from that data warehouse as a source, but everything that's being displayed then from that, it's known to be consistent across the board. So again, that whole comment about net sales for marketing or sales or finance is something that everybody will be able to see that displayed within their front-end BI. And then because we support a variety of options, we don't force one front-end tool. That's one of the benefits of the data warehouse. It's agnostic to any front-end tool, and that's that data structure on the back end that puts that data into a much more cleaner format for BI. Currently, the modules that we have available, you can see here on the screen: general ledger, accounts receivable, accounts payable, sales, inventory, procurement, enterprise asset management, job cost, manufacturing, contract billing, HR payroll, property management. I think we've also got coming shortly the like transportation, and if you have any other modules that you're interested in, feel free to reach out to us. We can kind of give you an idea of where that falls on our roadmap. As far as implementation time goes, we've been able to do, because we've built this the package solution, and we know that every company wants to have the ability to customize, and we support that. So part of what we do is we've gone in and within, again, those are 5,000 tables in JD Edwards. Even the dimension and fact tables that we have selected in our warehouse, for instance, the general ledger may have 190 columns in it. We are not intentionally building and putting the warehouse with 190 columns. we might pick and say, okay, of those 190, we find 87 to be what we've applicable to reporting in BI. So that's what we're currently building. However, we've already have the underlying code to be able to expose any of those 190 very quickly. So based on each customer installation, we go through, here's our out-of-box fields, you say, well, we need these other 3 fields that aren't currently there. That's all included in part of our installation, is to go through each fact and dimension and add back what you need. You could also choose to hide things that you don't, but most typically customers would really just want to add potentially, and some just say, well, actually, you've already identified everything we need, so there's no reason for us to augment anything. So for us to kind of get the target enterprise data warehouse, map all the ETL, and this is not just per module. I mean, we're talking about, you could take 8 modules here, and within 1 to 3 days, we're basically getting a data warehouse out of box running with your JD Edwards data in that time frame. So it's very quick compared to some alternatives out there in the market. And then we have a second pass where we say, okay, now we've got everything functioning as designed, and then we go back and we'll tailor that with customizing the dimensions and facts in tailoring that to each client environment. And again, that could vary. You might be changing 2 fact tables, but that's it, or you might be not changing anything. So that's that side. And then as far as the front end BI, then we take, as now we've got that source of environment in place, we've got to map some content on front of that to kind of get the front end BI stuff in place. And then again, that's another few days there. So where you're looking at this, you're going to get within less than a week a data warehouse running with data and potentially the ability to drag and drop and build your BI content in that time frame. So how we price, we're not going to get into the details. We'd be happy to take that offline. If you're interested in that, feel free to just put that as a comment in your survey, and we'll reach out to you. But I can tell you kind of our structure. We price by module, and there's kind of a general foundation in this case to kind of get a lot of those conform dimensions that are shared across modules, some of the standard date dimension, time dimension, some things again shared across the board, and then it's just by module. And so you can pick just general ledger, you can pick GL, AP, AR, you could include whatever modules you want, and we're not licensing per any type of user count or anything like that. It's just kind of, but we do charge annual maintenance to kind of keep updates with the ETL of Microsoft SSIS, as well as you upgrade JD Edwards, to keep those scripts updated to the most recent and current releases of the JD Edwards software as well. So why Preferred Strategies? Again, just to kind of recap, our approach is really leveraging the market leading softwares out there, right? So if you look at the BI space, there's about, I think 5 or 6 vendors own almost 65 or 70% of the overall BI market. So that's kind of we focus on those market leaders. They're the ones that lead in capabilities and R&D and functionality. So it's truly to standardize your reporting and BI infrastructure. Those are the vendors that allow you to do that across any data source. So that's we support market leading BI. Then we've got with our data warehouse or our direct connect BI quick views, we're basically JD Edwards aware. So we basically understand the underpinnings and the complexity of JD Edwards and have built that into the solutions to kind of make that available. Again, we support not just a data warehouse. However, that is the best format to get a long-term strategy in place for supporting one unified platform across all your source systems. But we've got direct connect, ODS, and data warehouse. And time to value, again, as I mentioned in the slide before, in a matter of days, you're getting market-leading BI up and running. And when you look at how we match up cost-wise or price-wise compared to the competition, it's night and day. So let's go ahead and open us up for questions. I'm going to announce the winner as well. Give me a second here. So All right, let me open up, give me a second.